Welcome to the Rejuvenate podcast. I'm your host, Chrissy Hawks, and I'm here with my co-host, Elwin Robinson. And a little while ago, we did an episode on peptides talking about what they are, how they work, and gave you guys a big list and talked all about them. But today we are going to be talking about peptides, but in particular, Elwin's favorite peptides. So Elwin, talk to us a little bit about why this topic and why today.
Yeah, so we got some good feedback on that episode, but I know a lot of people had a little bit of criticism maybe around you're not giving very specific recommendations. And of course, that's because I can't give specific recommendations. These are research chemicals. But I thought, you know what I can do is actually give my review, talk about why I use them, and also how I use them, how much I use, when I do it, all the rest of them. And that's obviously not medical advice in any way, and very literally what works for me may not work for you. But it gives you an idea about what someone might do, like a jumping off point, as it were. And I wanted to talk about them. I mean, peptides are awesome. I was really reflecting back and what is the easiest way to help someone who wants to feel younger, who wants to feel better straight away. And usually it is peptides and hormones first, right? That's the easiest win. And I was thinking a lot about people who are against this kind of thing. I've heard a lot of people say, I just want to get everything from a natural diet or something like that. And I do appreciate that impulse and urge. And if that's you, fair enough, of course. I accept all paths. But the reason why I like this and the reason why I think it's good that it's coming out is because I really feel like that old marketing cliche is actually kind of true of this. It's like, this is the stuff that's been used by the rich and the famous and the powerful for, in some cases, several decades now. And at least if it's new and it's, only become recently available, at least now it's used by a lot of them, right? There's a reason why, these Hollywood celebrities and models and, even you could say some politicians and prominent people, often they do look very young and healthy despite, not just despite their age, but also despite the life they must have led, which, must have been pretty intense and demanding. And it's a bit of an exaggeration to say they're all on this stuff, but a lot of them are. And so it's a question, if you want to keep up and be at your best and you want to be competitive, and who knows, maybe in 10 or 20 years time, all the technology will change again. There'll be something else that you can do that really puts you ahead of the curve. But for now, this is really it. So I wanted to share, my experience with my favorites. And then also we'll throw in, if we have time at the end, a few that I wouldn't recommend. And I'll talk about why not.
Fantastic. I'm really excited to get to this list. I mean, I know we went over in depth before, so, any listeners that want to check that out, please refer to that podcast that we did on peptides.
Yeah, if you don't know what a peptide is, if you don't know what we mean by that, if your only frame of reference of peptides is like collagen peptides, which is the supplement that a lot of people take, that's kind of a more processed form of gelatin, then definitely watch that episode first, because this is going to go straight in the deep end. We're assuming you already know what peptides are and going from there.
Right, then let's jump off that deep end. Where are we going to start with first?
Well, I guess it's the desert island thing. Like, if you could only take one peptide to a desert island, what would it be? And for me, that would be Thymosin Alpha 1, which is sometimes shortened to a TA1. So why is it my favorite? I love Thymosin Alpha 1 because of its strengthening and regulating effect on the immune system. Our immune systems are under assault these days more than ever before. There's I don't think you have to go too far into conspiracy world to say that there are factions out there that are actually looking to create more and more dangerous and contagious diseases, right? That's part of a military approach for many countries. So the idea that we don't have to worry about our immune system in this day and age is foolish. As we've talked about in other episodes, the immune system is impacted not just by organisms, but also by toxins of all kinds, whether it's heavy metals and mycotoxins and pesticides, xenoestrogens, BPA, it goes on and on and on and on. All of those things are also negatively impacting our immune system. Stress is negatively impacting our immune system. So we have so much going on. What is Thymosin Alpha 1? It's basically the primary peptide that supports the functioning of the immune system. So a lot of peptides and hormones are basically going in there and like upregulating or downregulating. So one we've talked about, for instance, a lot is the thyroid. And basically more thyroid hormone means more mitochondrial activity. Less thyroid hormone means less mitochondrial activity. Well, it's pretty similar for this, for thymosin alpha 1 and the immune system. More thymosin alpha 1 means more immune system activity, more strength of the immune system. The main gland in the body that will produce thymosin alpha 1 is called the thymus. And the thymus is this little gland above the heart. And I say it's little. And the reason is that when we're very young, the thymus is actually a big, strong organ, which is, really, I guess, creating and pumping up our immune system to begin with. And then there's a lot of speculation, which seems reasonable, that as we get older, that thymus really does shrivel away compared to before, compared to any other organ. It really gets a lot weaker and is producing a lot less thymosin alpha 1 as a result of that. And so because of that process, our immune system isn't working as well. Now, it's good to try and rejuvenate our thymus with all kinds of techniques to try and get our immune system creating as much as it can endogenously. But still, as we talked about at the beginning, if you want to cheat, if you want to optimize, either way, if you want to be the best you can be. So when would I take thymosin alpha 1? I actually take it frequently. I do it a little bit differently than what they say. They tend to talk about doing a high dose, periodically, like every few days, or just taking it if you're concerned about an infection. My experience with it is that there's no upper limit, and there's also no tolerance. The only thing that could be said about using it a lot might be that it's wasteful, that you don't need it. But the way I look at it is that, unlike with thyroid hormone, unlike with, say, testosterone, there really isn't such a thing as too much. And that's been borne out in the literature, that it hasn't been proven that, if you take, 10 times as much of this as normally people take, that there's any problem ever, even if you do it for a very long time. And I think that's for the reason I said, if the thymus was strong and healthy like it was when you were really young, it would be producing so much of this stuff. And so the fact that you're adding some, it helps, but it's still not going to be any, it's going to be very hard for you to, just in terms of money, unless I guess you were very wealthy. It's not the cheapest peptide, so you'd have to spend so much to get to a level where it might ever be excessive. I guess that might be the reason why no one's ever done it before. So I like to do it a lot because I like to support my immune system a lot. I would definitely make sure that I did it before a flight. If it was possible to take it with me to whatever country I was going to, I would definitely do that as well. I would have it even before I go into a big city, before I public transport. I mean, just anything. And if that sounds over the top and uptight, I wouldn't be scared if I didn't take it. I don't mean that, but I just mean, why not support yourself? Why not give yourself a boost? So yeah, I'm a big, and of course, thymosin alpha 1, it's a fairly big, long peptide. And my understanding is that your body makes smaller peptides out of that, it cleaves the peptide into pieces, and then those pieces have other functions that are also beneficial secondarily. So even if you don't feel like your main immune system needs supplementing, I feel it definitely also has secondary benefits. So yeah, I'm a big fan of thymosin alpha 1. The only thing that really would hold me back from recommending it to a loved one or something like that would be potentially cost.
Right, yeah, because I was going to ask if there are any kind of safety concerns or any space within, but I think you touched on it with dosing and things like that. But let's just say you've got somebody out there that's got an autoimmune disease where they say, well, wait a minute, if I've got autoimmune and you're upregulating and my immune system's already causing me damage, can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So again, I can't, make any recommendations to anyone watching, but if I think of myself, if I had an autoimmune disease and then I started considering it, I would take a lower amount, but I have not seen to begin with, but I have not seen any evidence that it would impact that negatively. I've only seen evidence that it would help or do nothing, because it's not an immune booster. It is, but it supports the regulatory function of the immune system as much as it does the attacking part of the immune system. For want of a better word, a lot of the different interleukins and the different constituents of the immune system, they're kind of divided into either those which are actively, aggressively seeking things to deal with, let's just say, to be general as possible, or it's regulating those. They're kind of like managers of those, right? Or generals, right? Troops. Let's not create too many troops. Let's not send too many that way. Let's not have them attack that. That's actually a piece of human tissue. You shouldn't be attacking that, guys. So it's almost like a manager. And so Thymosin Alpha 1 supports both the regulatory and the strengthening of the dealing with, let's say, attacking function. Although it could be, it's not necessarily attacking because it could be, dealing with waste products and stuff like that. But yeah, the type that's actually doing stuff, the type that's regulatory gets just as much support. So for instance, I would feel much better about using this if I had an autoimmune disease than I would about using, let's say, echinacea, which is much more of an immune stimulator. Anecdotally, I'll say from my experience as well, I've noticed when taking it at the beginning of some kind of infection that it actually makes the symptoms worse, sometimes for a few hours, which I interpret as, strengthening the fighting part of it. And so that's the thing that could support what you're saying, Chrissy, that possibility does exist for someone with autoimmunity, which is why I said I would also start slowly. If I had autoimmunity, I would start at a very low dose and then build up and make sure that I wasn't having a reaction to it. But then I found that after that initial period, then with any kind of infection, it's the opposite. It actually makes the symptoms become less. So for me, it seems to only make symptoms worse during the first part of an illness when an infection is first there. So it's possible. I think it's unlikely. And as I said, none of the literature supports that it would be an issue, but I would still be careful.
Are there any kind of different forms, or if somebody's looking into this, that, is there a best form or is there just one type?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, that's really the same as like all peptides, which we talked about in the full peptide episode. But I will say this type only works as an injectable. You can't use it as a nasal spray and all the rest. And that's one of the other reasons it may be off-putting to someone. Obviously, if I was stuck at a desert island and there was not access to safe ways of administering it, it wouldn't be my choice. I'm kind of, presuming that. And I think that may be, on a practicality-wise, one of the reasons why people often recommend to do, say, 2 doses a week rather than every day, because, a lot of people don't want to have an injection every day. And in fact, I don't have an injection every day. I do it kind of just based on when I feel like it now. Although for a while when I needed to support my immune system, I was doing it regularly.
So Elwin, what dosages would be recommended for Thymosin Alpha 1?
Obviously, I can't recommend anything, but I'll say from my perspective, I would use around 0.5 milligram per day if I wanted to support my immune system, for an ongoing reason. If I were faced with, an imminent infection, maybe someone in my house has got something or whatever, then I might do 1 milligram, even 1.5 milligram a day. But again, as I said before, the main rate limiting one of this to me is really cost, rather than that you can ever necessarily overdose. As far as I've seen, please correct me if you've seen any evidence to the contrary in the comments. But yeah, that's a good amount. That's a good amount, between 0.5 and 1.5 milligrams.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So then, Elwin, what's next on your list?
Well, I really love thymosin beta-4, which is also known as TB4, and it's also confusingly referred to as TB500, even though technically originally that was meant to be something else. So in fact, yeah, I may as well get to that straight away. So TB4, thymosin beta-4, the original version of that is actually kind of like the OG thymus peptide. So the thymus being the one of the most essential constituents of the immune system, as we have discussed previously. And so as we get older, our thymus gets less big. And as our thymus gets less big and less strong, then it's able to produce less of these peptides, which support the immune system. So thymosin beta-4 is actually the biggest of those peptides. It's a chain of 43 amino acids. And thymosin alpha 1, which we've talked about before, is more of a like 50-50, some boosting, some regulating action. Thymosin beta-4 is like pretty much 100% regulating. And so if you want to deal with maybe supporting your body through potential infection, then I would do that with thymosin alpha 1. If I wanted to support the body in not having an excess inflammatory response to anything, whether it's an infection, whether it's an allergen, whether it's a burn or a cut, whatever it may be. And in fact, injury, which we'll talk about in a second, is one of the main reasons that this is used. Then I would use thymosin beta-4. And of course, in many instances, I would actually want to use both. Like if I had a cut or a burn or an infection or something like that, then I'd want to both boost my immune system to deal with anything, plus I would want to control the immune system as much as possible to not have an excess inflammatory reaction. The reason why this is so huge, I don't think, you need to be told that inflammation is bad. I think everyone knows that these days watching this. But I don't think we sometimes appreciate how bad it is and how many different systems it affects. The digestive system and the joints are things that we frequently think of, but and these days also the cardiovascular system with more issues about that becoming more common. But it's also affecting your brain, for instance, right? There's a brain and nervous system. There's a lot of talk these days in the scientific community about how maybe things like depression, especially, and also anxiety, and certainly cognitive decline and all the rest of it, can be caused by inflammation in the brain and in the nervous system. So inflammation is a hugely big deal. As to how we got that mess in the first place of being chronically overinflamed, that's something I talk about in detail in other videos. But, for right now, just say whatever reason you're in the mess and whatever lifestyle stuff you also need to change to deal with it, thymosin beta-4 can be really great. Now, this is actually where I first discovered peptides, because I was looking up mold illness or mycotoxin illness. And so mycotoxins are an interesting thing that they really poison the nervous system. They really also stop the immune system from functioning properly. So they cause the immune system to be more inflamed. And that's why one of the things that mold illness is referred to is as CIRS or CIRS, chronic inflammatory reactivity syndrome. So this is where basically your body starts having an inflammatory reaction to everything, or it seems like everything, right? Like every food, every supplement, every herb, every particle in the air, everything you touch, it can get that way, and it can drive those minority of people who experience that like mad. It's really, really unpleasant. And so they were recommending thymosin beta-4 as a way of just universally, holistically calming that whole inflammatory response down, so that then the person could actually start to heal. So that's how I first got into it. It actually did help me with that. I had mycotoxins and heavy metal poisoning, very high levels of lead, which also creates that inflammatory response. And so I had to try and find something that worked. And this was, I would say, along with CBD, thymosin beta-4, and the next one we'll talk about, were like some of the first things that got my immune system to calm down and stop reacting to everything. So I always have a special place in my heart for that reason. Now, there's another different type of thymosin beta-4 called TB500. So thymosin beta-4 is 43 amino acids in a row. And you can actually take a piece of one or a piece of another or a piece of another, and then they're actually different things. It used to be that that middle piece from 17 to 23 was referred to as TB500. So what's the difference? I've just said that TB4 is like generally anti-inflammatory, but I was massively simplifying. It actually has loads and loads and loads of different functions, which are very beneficial. Now, the middle part, the 17 to 23, is the specific anti-inflammatory part, or seems to be. And so if your issue is purely inflammation and you have no concern for the immune system, so for instance, if you've sprained something but are otherwise in a very high level of health, and you're only trying to reduce inflammation, you're otherwise very, very happy with your health, then you'd probably want to go for something called fragment 17 to 23, which is just the anti-inflammatory component of TB4. Why would you want to do that? Well, you get a lot more of that component, right? So if you get 10 milligrams of TB4 or versus 10 milligrams of this fragment, you're going to get a hell of a lot more of those fragments within that 10 milligrams. So if your goal is just to reduce inflammation and nothing else, that fragment is often better. Most companies these days seem to not even know the difference. That's one good way of telling a quality company from another, I'd say, is if they make that distinction and if they offer you both versions. The vast majority do not a guarantee, obviously, but it's an indicator. And so I really like to have both around. I like to have TB4 for like general wellness purposes, like I talked about earlier with the mold and heavy metal toxicity. I actually found out that TB4, for instance, is one of the only things that detoxifies lead from the body. Almost nothing does. So that was quite exciting to discover that. This thing I'd been getting benefit from, this might have been one of the reasons why. So I personally like to have TB4, but I like to have the fragment around as well if there's any like more acute inflammatory situation where I want something to heal. And that one, TB4 and BP157, I'll talk about separately. Those two are often marketed or recommended together as like a dream team for healing.
So earlier we were just talking, and I want to kind of get back to that with the inflammation and things like that. And I know we were discussing with autoimmune diseases. If somebody has something like, let's say, rheumatoid arthritis or something that's, always it's the immune system kicking in, lots of inflammation, what would be best for them to look at?
Well, in the realm of peptides, I would use Thymosin beta-4. That would be the number one recommendation. Yeah, it would be this one for that regulating effect. Yeah, that would really be the main one. With a limited amount of budget, which most people have, I would put it into that in terms of peptides. But of course, there's a bunch of other stuff, which we talked about in detail in the chronic pain episodes.
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll put the links below for all those other episodes that we have done so that everybody can go and take a look. And then I wanted to ask Elwin, what forms are available for these?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's actually several with this one. So I've seen it available injectable, as it almost always is, but I've also seen it nasal, and I've seen it actually in a capsule form. So for you to go through your digestive system. So we'll talk about the relative benefits and drawbacks of each. The only time you'd really want to use the digestive one is if you're trying to reduce inflammation in the digestive system. The reason being because it's not that well absorbed. So again, unless money is literally no object, you're going to get so much better value by having it injectable than you are with the oral version. But if you want the healing and anti-inflammatory effect to be localized to your digestive system, which many people do, right? They've got leaky gut, they've got, Crohn's disease or, whatever kind of inflammatory situation going on, then that would potentially make sense. The nasal one, I had that before from a company. I did not feel the same benefit from it. My understanding is that it might be similar in that it will have a localized effect. So it would be good for reducing inflammation in the sinuses. Some people say it crosses the blood-brain barrier better there to reduce inflammation in your brain. I haven't found that personally, but perhaps it's because I haven't had inflammation in my brain to a degree that that's noticeable. So it would certainly be worth a try. If I had, strong depression, to use a TB4 nasal spray, but the injectable is certainly the best value for money, the more immediate effect as well. Like you'll feel it within a few minutes.
And what would you say is your favorite form to take it in?
Out of those two, if I had to choose, usually the TB4 rather than the fragment, because it's hard to explain, but it just has a more, as I said, broad spectrum benefit. And if nothing else for me as well, I know it's there's a section of it that the body uses then to transport heavy metals out of the body. So I want that benefit as well.
So Elwin, for the dosages for TB4 and TB500, what would be the mainstream or what would be the guidelines there?
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, this seems to be another one, and I've said this before about Thymosin Alpha 1, where there doesn't seem to be any upper amount that is bad. And so the main thing that's going to limit you from taking more is going to be the cost. The general recommendation I've seen is something like 0.5 milligram to 1 milligram a day. But I have seen prominent people in the peptide world talk about, look, if you got a real issue, like the one you mentioned before, for instance, rheumatoid arthritis, Chrissy, you could have 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams a day. The thing is, 10 milligrams might cost like $100. So that's a lot, right? That's too much for almost anyone. But it may be not if you're really suffering, right? This is a choice that people make. And sometimes, you know, their healthcare is already very expensive and it actually may be a bargain compared to that. But certainly if you're paying for it out of pocket and you do not have something that's severely debilitating, that can seem excessive. So as I said, the upper limit is really how much you're willing to pay rather than how much can you have safely. I personally, you know, cannot afford and not willing to pay for 5 or 10 milligrams a day. But if I'm being generous with myself, I'll probably go for something like 0.5 to 1 milligrams a day.
Thank you, Elwin. That's really, really, really helpful. So what is next?
So one peptide I really love is BP157. Now, I know I'm not the only one. This is, or at least it was up until recently, I guess, one of the most popular peptides of all. And this is really because of its ability to heal. That's the number one thing you could say about it. So BPC stands for body protective compound. And then 157 is just due to the chemistry of it. So what does that actually mean? So this is an interesting one that a lot of other peptides we talk about are produced in glands and sometimes organs. But usually glands. So BP157 is something that's created in the organs. But the organ is interesting. It's created in the stomach. Why that's interesting is because the stomach is mainly known for destroying stuff, right? It's for breaking things down with the extremely low pH acid rather than creating something. And yet that is exactly what it does. And so I have a theory about this, which is not too common that I'll share. But before we get into that, so your body creates this super fast healing substance in your stomach, which then, because that's the direction that digestion will go, goes from the stomach to the duodenum, down to the small intestine, large intestine, etc. So my theory about this is like, what would happen to a person's digestive system if they were not creating an optimal amount of BPC 157? I think that the digestive system would start to deteriorate. It would start to have little tears and micro tears. Maybe the tight junctions wouldn't be as tight. You'd start to have intestinal permeability. You'd start to have more, inflammation. Maybe you'd start to have cysts, ulcers, all of this kind of lesions, all of this kind of stuff, right? Because the acid in the stomach is very, very acidic. It burns. It can be as low as pH 1, which is something like, you take it out and you put it on the surface and it could just burn through it. Like, this is seriously, seriously acidic. So you've got seriously, potentially dangerously high level of acidity in your stomach. And then you've got seriously toxic, dangerous levels of toxicity in your gallbladder, which we talked about in detail in the episode Liver and Gallbladder, the toxic bile theory, the idea that bile actually is probably the most toxic substance in the body. And that is why the liver has such a fantastic ability to regenerate, because it has to, because it's continually being burnt by this bile, so it has to keep regenerating. So when we're talking about regenerating, one of the best things for regenerating is BP157. So I don't think it's a coincidence that your body creates this BP157 just at the site of and upstream of the two main areas that are going to be burnt and worn away by your body's own fluids. And even, you know, like the content of the large intestine is pretty toxic as well, right? And so that's, if the content of the large intestine was in most places of the body, it would cause serious damage. If the content of the liver was in most places in the body, it would cause serious damage. If the content of the stomach was in most places of the body, it would cause serious damage. So it caused serious damage everywhere else. But even though those environments are just said are made for that substance, there's still going to be some damage, right? And I think that's the reason why your body creates BP157, is to help the body recover from that ongoing damage from these very toxic substances. So that's why I think it's a really great idea, because I feel like, you know, many people in the modern age, doctors, scientists, but also, you know, in the ancient systems, going back a long way, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, they say that the gut, the intestines, the digestive system is the root of most illness, maybe because often it's where inflammation starts, which then becomes systemic, maybe because of many other reasons, toxicity that we just talked about. So supporting that digestive system, both by calming that inflammation down, which is more of a thing for TB4, which often is partnered with BP157, but also by helping to actually recover, is really, really key. So it's really, really beneficial for the digestive system. I believe it's also very, very essential for the cardiovascular system. We talked a lot in the full episode we did about the cardiovascular system, how it's micro tears in the like the walls of the arteries, especially, and other areas as well, that then the body forms clots around it, and that clotting, when it becomes excessive, can be life-threatening. But it's like, why is there an excessive clotting in the first place? My understanding is it's these micro tears. And so again, having something which encourages and helps your body to heal more quickly is super beneficial for that process as well. Let alone what it's actually commonly used for, which is injuries, right? You twist something, you break something, you tear something. This is where BPC 157 has really become famous for athletes, especially, you know, being told it's going to take 6 weeks to recover, and then it only takes them a week or two, something like that, with these high doses of BP 157 and TB500 and maybe a bunch of other things as well. But these are often considered the key things that help you to heal so quickly. So I'm a big fan of BP 157. I use it pretty much every day for this reason, because like I said, even if I haven't injured myself, now I say pretty much because sometimes I forget to take any peptides. So, but I mean, if I'm taking a peptide, it's going to have BP 157 in it. It's going to be part of the mix because, first of all, I'm not in a state of perfect health. I still have there's heavy metals in me, which I know are, again, damaging things, burning holes in tissues and stuff like that everywhere they go. So to get support with that healing process is always great. It's always helpful. And then, secondarily, because the gut, right? The gut is constantly being assaulted by, even if we're healthy, even if we're in a situation of perfect health, like we're taking in toxins, we're taking in organisms, there's endotoxins that those organisms create. This is all just part and parcel of normal eating stuff and living. But as much as we can support our body in doing that, the better. Now, you may say, but Elwin, I'm in perfect health, I've got a perfect stomach, I believe it creates enough of its own BPC. Great, good for you. Peptides are really for people who are trying to optimize, but also who need it, right? So if you don't need it, then you don't need it. But I'm someone who has a history of having these issues, so I love to have BP 157.
I was going to ask, because you said it is made in the stomach, but then you were also talking about healing other parts of the body if you get hurt. So, somebody may think, oh, it's purely just for the digestive tract or the stomach, but that's not necessarily the case, is it?
It's not true at all, yeah, because of course, I said to begin with about how it primarily is, in this area which needs a lot of healing. But of course, it's also in this area where nutrients are absorbed, right? So some of it will get absorbed, it'll go into the bloodstream, and then from the bloodstream, it can go wherever it needs to go. It's interesting that you bring that up because there's actually been research in that area. Because when people first recommended BP157 for injuries, they would recommend injecting it right into the area of the injury to make sure it gets to the right place. But they researched that and quickly found that actually it makes no difference. Like, if you can inject it at any part of your body and it will go where it needs to go. Now, the advantage of injecting, we can talk about methods next, is what I just said. And so generally BPC is found in injectable. I've also seen it as intranasal. And it's, again, fairly commonly available in capsule form. In capsule form, they usually sell a form called BPC 157 arginate. So that's where it's bound to an arginine salt. And so this, they claim, I'm not 100% sure about this, but this is the claim made. If it's in that form, it's way better absorbed that way. Because the thing is, otherwise, a very small amount of BP 157 does get into the bloodstream through the digestive system. Not very much is digested. There's no definitive evidence about how much of the type that your body naturally produces is absorbed. But when I say the type, I mean it's exactly the same. Thymosin Alpha 1, Thymosin Beta 4, and BP 157 are all bioidentical. So the type that you buy is exactly the same that's in the body. But what I mean is with BP 157, I don't know if the type your stomach creates is naturally bound to an amino acid, a salt or whatever. I don't know exactly how that works. I don't think anyone knows, but if you do, put it in the comments. So I don't know how much you absorb of your own BPC, but I would assume it's not that much as well. Because as I said, my belief, my hypothesis is that probably throughout history, we always had a lot of repairing to be doing in the gut. And so that's kind of where it's meant to primarily be. But of course, if you have somewhere else that needs repairing, then you need it in your bloodstream. And that's where it can be really, really helpful to use an injectable. For the intranasal one, I found this, again, I think if your sinuses are damaged, it would help. But I don't know how well absorbed it is through the sinuses into the bloodstream. My opinion is that not very well. I've heard people say 50%, so maybe half of it. So I think it's better than for the digestive tract, but to be honest, I found it slightly irritating for my sinuses, so I would prefer to inject it by far.
And are there any certain dosages that are recommended out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So orally, again, BP157 is another one that is not really about recommended. It's about how much can you afford, because very large amounts can be just fine. I've heard a tiny bit of stuff with BPC about how it's possible to have too much. I think it's conjecture. I don't think it's definitive. But because of those doubts, I think the amounts that are recommended tend to be less. So I think the dose that I've seen recommended is usually about anything from 100 to 250 microgram, which is between 0.1 and 0.25 of a milligram. So the tablets that I've seen, or the capsules I've seen, have always been 250 micrograms. Obviously, with the injection bottle, you choose it yourself, but they're usually sold in 5 milligram bottles. So, yeah, I personally have not used more than 1 milligram, but I found 1 milligram to be just fine, no issues whatsoever. Of course, whenever you're dealing with any compound, there is a possibility of a reaction to it. But I'll say this: as someone who was very reactive in the past, who reacted to almost everything, I found that the only thing that my body seemed to have, and when I say reaction, the only reaction I got is a little bit of redness around the site of injection, but that did not happen at all with Thymosin Alpha 1, Thymosin Beta 4, or BPC 157, or Thymolin, because those are identical to what your body makes itself. If it's something that your body doesn't necessarily make itself, then you're more likely to have that reaction. Now, in oxytocin, you also get a reaction, but that's the reaction of oxytocin. Like oxytocin has a big impact on your cardiovascular system. It can change your heart rate and stuff like that. But again, that's not like an immune reaction. That's just a reaction to the fact you suddenly got all this hormone in you. But yeah, so those natural peptides, I've had no itching, no redness, nothing that might indicate that, you know, I've had anything foreign into my body. And this is quite interesting. Like it absolutely does happen with some of the other ones, like ipamorelin and the growth hormone peptides, for instance, which I think is because they are not natural, because they disappear so quickly than the natural ones in your bloodstream. They've had to modify them to make them last longer. And so that modification makes your body go, huh, what's that? And like give a little bit of an inflammatory response. Maybe. It doesn't happen to everyone. So I would not worry about having even a large dose of it personally, but of course everyone's different.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it as far as, you know, if there were any other safety concerns potentially with this one.
You never know how your immune system's going to react to anything. So it's always a concern. And so that's why, you know, we don't recommend anything, especially if you're injecting it. I think the concern about using it orally would be pretty minimal. I think for that reason, it's allowed to be sold just as a supplement rather than a medicine.
Fantastic. Thank you, Elwin. So now further into our deep dive, what is next on your list?
Well, I really like the peptide GHK-Cu. So GHK is the peptides, and then Cu stands for copper. So there's a version with copper and a version without copper. The version with copper is usually slightly expensive, but that's the version that's naturally found in the body. So GHK-Cu, you could kind of call it the anti-aging peptide. I don't think that would be unfair to say. But the main reason why people usually use it is for the skin. So when I say anti-aging, it's because it has been shown to prevent DNA damage, at least to some degree. It's also been shown that as you get, the older you get, the less and less of this peptide you naturally have in your blood. And when that's the case with something, like it's the case also of DHEA and various other hormones, we often say, maybe the lack of that as you get older is part of the aging process. And so, yeah, the GHK-Cu is related to aging, I would say. But the main reason most people use it is for the aging of the skin. So this is a really, really simple one. You can either buy GHK-Cu, just the peptide. It's a blue powder because of the Cu part of it. Copper looks blue when it's in that powdered supplement form. And you can stir it into whatever you normally use. So if you use a face toner, moisturizer, I don't know, all these things that you ladies use. I know I say to my wife, you know, would you like me to put some GHK copper in one of your bottles? And she'll just give me, you know, something and I'll put it in there. So it's a way of upgrading any kind of healthy cosmetic product that you already like. Or there are different cosmetic products out there that contain it. And in fact, hopefully we're not close to it yet, but maybe at some point we are planning to bring one of those to market. So GHK is one of the few peptides that is primarily used transdermally. It is also sold as an injectable. I tried injecting a tiny bit of it once and really didn't like it. I don't know why it was. My body had a no thank you reaction to it.
I was going to say, what was your reaction?
Just feeling slightly poisoned, like slightly, I don't know, just weird. I can't remember well, to be honest, but it was like it was an immune system reaction. It was not an obvious one like hives or something like that. It was more like a neurological one, but it was a very distinct kind of, you know, yuck kind of thing. So, yeah, you could say, oh, well, placebo effect, but it was bad enough that I didn't want to try it again. Now, the good thing is I don't have to, because it's one of the only peptides that's actually, you know, just as well absorbed through the skin as it is that way. So why is it well absorbed through the skin? I have not found really good evidence for that. The size of the molecule is not particularly small compared to other peptide, so I don't see that that's the issue. But for whatever reason, it just is well absorbed into the skin. And so a lot of people feel really good about how it makes their skin feel smoother and glow and all the rest of it. I'll be honest, because I'm a man, I've not been very consistent using it. I was like a year ago or something, but I haven't used it for a while. So I can't say, I mean, I'm 42. I think I'm not too wrinkled or whatever, but I don't know how much that is down to GHK really. I'll have to be honest. But I'll tell you, it always makes your skin feel good. You know, my wife says exactly the same thing. She loves it. She is not interested in most of the things I recommend to her, but she likes this one because she says it, you know, makes her skin brighter and smoother and all the rest of it. So, yeah, and as I said, I won't go into it in this video because these are meant to be short, bite-sized chunks, but there's a whole book about GHK copper and its benefits that we can give a link to in the description here that goes through, you know, chapter by chapter for hormones, for stress, for DNA, for, you know, different organ systems. Like it has massive benefits for every system of the body. I'll give you a crazy theory if you want a crazy theory.
Yes, please.
So, all right. So some of the like ancient aristocrats had this, and this is a crazy theory. It's also a bit of a gross theory. So if you are squeamish, then stop watching now. Like skip ahead for a minute. But this idea of bathing in blood, right? There was Countess Bathory from you know, European aristocracy, but there's actually been this thing throughout the world, right? The Aztecs loved to do it. They would be sacrificing thousands of people sometimes, and it's actually been in almost every culture throughout the world. This idea of human sacrifice, eating other humans, which is another conversation, and bathing in their blood, and that's terrible, obviously. But I wonder if one of the interesting thing about the bathing thing, it was often done more by women to stay youthful. That's the key thing. So the eating thing was more by men to like take on the strength of their you know, opponents or whatever. But the bathing was more considered to be a thing that promoted beauty. And I wonder if one of the components in the blood was the GHK-Cu. And the reason being because it's one of the only peptides that's absorbed through the skin. And it's a peptide that keeps you younger, DNA-wise, to some degree, and it makes you look younger. So I was like, maybe, you know. And so, Elwin, are you encouraging? No. What I'm saying is, if you've ever been tempted to do that, you don't have to anymore. All you need to do is get some lovely copper peptide, which is very cheap and easy to synthesize, and don't bathe in any blood.
You mentioned about the different forms. There's the, you know, a skin application, but the injectable. Is there anything else, or are those two the main ones?
I've not. Have I seen an intranasal? I might have done, but I wouldn't. Personally, I definitely wouldn't do an intranasal. I've not seen a digestive one. And I think probably there could be one, but no one's bothered because of the skin. Because the easiest way to absorb anything pretty much is through the skin, right? It's the least troublesome usually. The only problem is it often doesn't work very well. But when it does, like with this, I mean, it's definitely preferable. And
then would there be, I mean, with skin application, I suppose, certain recommended doses, or what would be, you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. The one reason why you wouldn't want to have too much GHK-Cu that I know of is if you don't want too much copper, because obviously it does contain copper. Copper is something I talked about before. I did a different video where I talked about how copper balances with iron and zinc and molybdenum, and how you don't want to overdo any of those too much because it will reduce the others. It will cause your body to excrete the others. So if you eat and have eaten for a long time, like a high plant, no animal food diet, that's the type of diet you're most likely to end up with excessive copper. Or conversely, if you eat organ meat, that's the only animal food that has a lot of copper generally. And then, you know, you have low zinc and iron compared to copper usually if you're on that kind of diet. Otherwise, if you're on the opposite diet, if you eat quite a lot of animal food, not a huge amount of plant food, then you'd be very unlikely to have an excess of copper, again, unless you had a lot of organ meat. So that's kind of an indication. Obviously, it's always better to test, right? And copper is a good thing to test for every now and then at least, because excessive amounts of it really are dangerous and not a good thing. Have I seen any evidence that just taking GHK-Cu can cause a toxic level of copper? I have not. And again, the book I recommended earlier, which goes in detail about that, has a whole chapter on that, exploring that issue. However, if you already know you're copper toxic, which some people do, or suspect that you are, then I would take it easy with GHK-Cu. Other than that, because a lot of people actually are deficient in copper, most people don't eat, exclusively plant-based diet. That's not that common. So most people actually do have a lack of copper. I would say having, again, it's kind of the limit of affordability, So often GHK is cheaper than other popular peptides like TB4 or TA1 per milligram. So you often get 50 or even 100 milligrams for $100, something like that. So I would say probably if you're the least you would do would be 50 milligrams divided over 2 months. You might go as far as doing 100 milligram in just a month.
Wonderful. And then, besides the safety concern of if somebody has too high of copper, would there be anything else that people would need to look for?
Not that I know for the transdermal route, which is the only route that I use and would have anyone else use.
Fantastic. Thank you, Elwin. So, yes, I can see the wrinkles fading now.
I think a lot of models do use it.
Yeah. I've seen it out there a little bit. So no, it's great to have the education on it for sure. And because then it also goes to then, really looking at the label on those products and making sure, what you're putting on, it's again, enough of a solution where you're getting it, but also making sure that there's not anything else toxic in that cream or anything else that you're putting on transdermally. So you're not, giving yourself something great, but then also potentially, toxifying yourself even more.
Yes. And that's why, my first recommendation is if you've already found a skin product that like and trust and hasn't got any crap in, it's very easy to just order pure GHK and add it to that. But yeah, I know a lot of people, it's very actually hard to find a skincare product that isn't full of crap. So I would like to get something on the market at some point which has only goodness with GHK added. That would be nice.
We're going to take a quick break to share with you one of our amazing sponsors, Genetic Insights. What makes Genetic Insights uniquely valuable is that they test over 83 million different variants, which guarantees a 99.7% accuracy on all of their DNA reports. With over 100 reports available, you get comprehensive insights into what your DNA is telling you about how to optimize your health today and in the future. I found reviewing my results to be incredibly accurate and applying some of the recommendations, which are personalized to your individual DNA, to be extremely helpful for me and my family. I also loved how easy it was to upload my raw DNA data that I already had from previously using Ancestry.com because Genetic Insights supports uploading raw data from all major platforms. To get your health reports, go to geneticinsights.co and get 20% off today by using coupon code Rejuvenate. Remember that supporting our sponsors supports our podcast, which allows us to keep sharing this important information with you free of cost. So, go get your Genetic Insights health reports by going to geneticinsights.co and use coupon code Rejuvenate for 20% off today. And so then, what is next on our list today, Elwin?
Well, one of my favorite peptides, and this is my favorite bioregulator peptide, is Ovagen. So I talked about bioregulators in great detail in the episode that we did on that, but just a quick reminder. So most of the peptides that are out there are what I call supplemental peptides, meaning they're kind of trying to make up for a lack of your body's not already creating an optimal amount or the amount that you want. In the case of Ovagen, they are these different type of peptides that what they do is, they're very small. Usually they're only 2, 3, or 4 amino acids, very small peptides. And they actually go in and work on healing or regenerating an organ or gland so that then it will create enough of its own peptides. So for instance, their idea would be this whole system which developed in Russia, while our peptides developed more in the US and Europe. This system developed pretty much exclusively in Russia and some of the Eastern European countries, the bioregulator peptides. Their system was more focused on upregulating or euphoning, rejuvenating that particular organ and gland, so then it would create more of the peptides that you need for itself, as well as everything else that gland does. So I have to be honest, with most bioregulator peptides, I've done a bunch, but the most famous one that a lot of people have heard of is epitalon, which is that bioregulator peptide for the pineal gland. But I often had reaction to epitalon. It kind of feel like little pins and needles feeling just after taking it, which I don't really enjoy. And then when I've tried using it intralasally, I found that irritated my sinuses. So for whatever reason, epitalon's never really agreed with me. Most of the other bioregulators I enjoy and use sometimes, but honestly can't really tell. But the one that I absolutely can tell with is Ovagen. So one of the great things that happens with Ovagen for me is that I get a really a nice kind of sweet taste at the top of my mouth, which I know it sounds weird, but like I associate with like good hormonal health. This is a whole thing in the yogic system that depending on what taste you get in your mouth, it kind of is a reflection of what's going on in your lymphatic system and stuff like that, and also what's going on in your hormonal system. So with the Ovagen, it seems to create a very pleasant effect. Now the Ovagen, despite the name, you'd think it supports ovaries, but actually it's a liver supporting bioregulator. So it's helping to regenerate the liver. And so liver is been something that I've had an issue with around toxicity. And so one of the things that Ovagen does is to help the liver obviously regenerate and heal, which the liver has to do more than any other organ. And so, yeah, I just feel a bit stronger. I just feel a bit purer from Ovagen. So I really like it personally. It's not something that I'd use every day, but yeah, we'll get into that.
And so then within that, what would you say, what are the different forms and the ways that you can take it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in the US market, I've only ever seen it sold as a injectable. And a lot of the studies that show that those bioregulators are very effective, they are based on the injectable. But the Russians and other countries, like Estonia and Kazakhstan and other places that do it, they tend to have a full suite of versions of all these bioregulator, meaning they have injectables, but they also have oral capsules, which they claim, yes, you're not absorbing that much of it, but they actually give you a fairly big dose. So they claim that you still get quite a large amount out of it. They also have transdermal for all of the bioregulators, including Ovagen. And I've seen they even have sublingual. So they have the most, like most of these other peptides, either you're getting them prescribed from a doctor or a compounding pharmacy, or you're getting them yourself from some kind of research chemical company that is not very sophisticated. But with the bioregulators, they come from a culture where you can just say what it does without fear of some government agency shutting you down. And so because they're quite, just free to share what it does and all the rest of it, they've got quite a good customer base. And I think because they've got quite a good customer base, they've got a full suite of products, like every form that you can imagine, they've got it. So now, having said, that's all companies in like countries that a lot of people wouldn't trust to order from with a consumable. So that is the downside. And I certainly can't guarantee you that any of them are safe or effective and whatnot. So for simplicity's sake, because I order most of them from US or UK sources, I get that one. Well, actually Canada. I get that from a US or Canadian source, the Ovagen. In the injectable form. That's the only one that I found had that like really, really nice effect on me personally. But if you want to dip your toe into the world of peptides and you don't want to inject yourself, bioregulators, all of them, I have issues with liver, so I love Ovagen, but they've got Cardiogen for the heart, they've got Vesolute for the kidneys, they got every organ, every gland. They got something for. And what they teach is, even if you think you're optimal in every other way, the two parts of you that tend to shrivel away are the thymus, which is the immune system, and then the pineal, which is the kind of sleep, wake, and also to some degree recovery, rejuvenation system. And so if you want to keep feeling younger and there's nothing wrong with you don't have any organs or glands that you think need any improving, then from their point of view, you would still do at least the ones for the pineal and the ones for the immune system.
Let me ask you about this, because looking at it from the liver standpoint, would this be something then you would take, somebody would look at taking every day? Would it be once a week? I mean, or let's say, and sorry, throwing a couple of things at you, if, their genetic report came back saying that they had low liver function, or the certain SNPs indicating that there was potentially an issue there, would that be something that they would look at?
That's a good question. So their perspective on these peptides, the people who created and make available the bioregulators, is pretty much the same that I've been giving about all of the peptides in my videos, which is, not all the peptides, but, a lot of the most famous ones like TB4, like BP157, like Thymosin Alpha 1, like GHK, which is the more the better. It's up to you what you want to pay, right? So, in the case of the bioregulators, what they say is if you're optimal, you might just do a 10-day course twice a year. Twice a year, every 6 months, you do a 10-day course. And depending on what it is, right, capsules, injection, whatever, but it's usually a set amount that they'll sell to you. And then you follow it. They would say if you're ill, let's say you got a liver issue, as you just said, what they would say then is do it for longer. Rather than doing it for only 10 days, you may do it for a month. Or you may do it for 2 months, you may do it for 3 months. And take 2 or 3 times as much per day. So then we're really getting to it get quite expensive, right? There's no upper limit. The only downside of taking more than you need is that you're throwing money down the drain. And none of these are cheap. Although, compared to a lot of, other treatments, they are cheap. But if you compare them to supplements, none of them are cheap. So it's really down to you how much you want to put into it.
Okay, and then what about doses?
So pretty much like I said, if you're getting it from the Russian, Eastern European source, they'll tell you this is 10-day supply, this is whatever. If you're not doing that, if you're getting it from the US or Canada or UK, and you're getting more the research peptides where they don't tell you how much to take, this one's usually sold in 20 milligrams. And it used to be recommended that you have a lot, like that 20 milligrams might only be a few days worth. And then I've seen it actually be changed to say, no, the correct amount is between 0.5 and 1 milligram a day. 1 milligram being a good amount, half less if you're trying to save money. So that means in theory, if you don't have an issue with a particular organ or gland, but you just want to boost it, you could get one of these bottles, which is not that much, $50, I guess, and you've basically got a year's supply. You'd have like 20 doses of 1 milligram, 10 days every 6 months, right? So then it's not that expensive if you look at it that way. It only gets expensive if you have a real issue with it that you're trying to now resolve, and you're listening to their claims of how to do that. Obviously, I can't make any claims in that regard. So, but yeah, if you're doing the just optimizing path and there's nothing you're trying to resolve, then actually be pretty cheap, and you can maybe consider, I'd like to optimize my pancreas, I'd like to optimize my heart. You can get a few, right, if you're just using it in that way.
And then what about any kind of safety concerns or anything like that?
That's a good question. There's no safety concerns that I have seen at all with any of the bioregulators. Just like with the supplemental peptides I talked about, like TB4, TB500, BPC 157, they don't seem to create any kind of they don't seem to have any kind of immune reaction to them because they're already naturally present in the body. So there's no concerns around like any kind of reaction, except for the concerns that are always there, right? You could eat peanuts and die, right? Like, you never know how your immune system is going to respond to anything, but it's no more likely to respond to that than saline or whatever, is my understanding. So I use that one with relative confidence that everything is going to be okay.
Yeah, no, that definitely sounds like one, because I know when I did my Nutrivel, I got a thing back saying that I had something going on with my, like I had enough glycine, I had enough glutathione, but when he was looking at it, he was like, there's something in the liver detox pathway, so it's not nutrient. So I'm like, maybe Ovagen would be good for me for just a little, small little bout.
Yeah, really, there's no harm in it. That's the thing with bioregulators. The worst thing you can say about bioregulators is that you are wasting your money. But it's not gonna. And of course, this is the thing. Peptides, like the Western supplemental peptides, work so well that a lot of them kind of compare them. A lot of people kind of compare them to drugs, and of course, they're treated that way as well because they're that effective, right? And often they require doctor's prescription. There's only a few that don't, like GHK, CU. But most of them require doctor's prescription. So they're more in that drug category. Now, people in the West who are used to Western peptides, who then start using bioregulators, are like, I can't feel anything. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. But if you compare bioregulators to like Western drugs and Western peptides that tend to have quite a quick action, then often you are disappointed. But if you instead compare them to supplements or maybe herbs, then it's probably you'll have more realistic understanding, right? Like if there are herbs for every organ and gland, just like there are peptides for every organ and gland in the bioregulator system. And so often, you would expect to wait a while before that had an effect. And so that would be more realistic for the bioregulator class.
Thank you, Elwin. Thank you very much. And so what is next on your list today?
So I really enjoyed the MOTS-c peptide, and this might seem weird. It's when I first saw it advertised as exercise in a bottle, and I'm not saying that's true, but I guess the claim is you can lose weight while staying on the sofa eating potato chips or whatever. I don't believe that to be true, and I say it seems weird that this is a peptide that I enjoy because I'm pretty thin, but it's the reason that it's claimed to be exercise in the bottle that is exciting and interesting to me. And so MOTS-c is something that stimulates and optimizes the functioning of the mitochondria, so which would then influence the metabolism. So your metabolism, what does metabolism mean? Everyone talks about metabolism and metabolic health these days, but I see far more people talking about it who really understand what it even means, is how it comes across to me. So, it is simply the rate at which your mitochondria, which is the little factories in the center of every cell, produce energy, the rate at which they produce energy. And so generally it's considered that increasing metabolism is good for losing weight, which is true. Sometimes it's considered that slowing down metabolism is good for living longer, which I dispute. And we did a whole episode about that, which I'd refer people to if they want to find out more about metabolism. Now, the number one thing that drives metabolism is thyroid. So I would never encourage the use of MOTS-c before checking on thyroid. I would probably also put MOTS-c secondarily to methylene blue, which is something that I've talked about before and we'll talk about when we talk about research chemicals at some point.
So just to quickly go on that point about the thyroid, would you say that then you'd want that person's thyroid, function better before they would try something like MOTS-c?
Yes, absolutely. I'm trying to think of an analogy, but yeah, taking MOTS-c without making sure that you're optimizing thyroid first is like, I don't know, what's the analogy? Like trying to choose what kind of vitamin supplement you want to eat while you're still eating fast food every meal. It's like it's putting the cart before the horse. You have, like, the basic of metabolism is thyroid. This is something that's missed by almost everyone in the biohacking optimization world. Not everyone. There's some good people who are talking about it, but it's missed by too many people. So optimizing thyroid is primary. Optimizing stress hormones is also primary. Then if you want to help the whole mitochondrial process in general, methylene blue is fantastic for that. We'll talk about that in a different episode. But then if you're doing those things, or you don't want to do those things for whatever reason, you want an alternative, MOTS-c I would put next. And MOTS-c is in the category of, there's a couple of different peptides that offer this improvement of mitochondrial function. SS31 is another one, I believe. Humanin is another one. I have not liked any of them other than MOTS-c. MOTS-c is the one that I felt had a good effect. Now, with that one, I actually did a significantly less of a dose than is usually recommended. So usual recommendation is something like 5 milligrams a day for a course, for like a day, for a week, 10 days, something like that. But 5 milligrams is like $50 a time, you know, so that's a big cost. Obviously, people are willing to pay it because they want to lose weight. I felt I didn't want to lose weight. I didn't need that much support, so I was just doing half a milligram a day or 1 milligram a day, something like that, like a much smaller amount. And I felt it had a nice boosting, energizing effect. So I like MOTS-c. When people ask me for weight loss peptides, I mean, everything's changed since Ozempic and SEMAGLUTIDE came along. I do not recommend that. We'll do a separate video about that. So if someone asks for a weight loss peptide, it must be a peptide, and they don't want to hear about it or are already doing thyroid, sex hormones, etc. Growth hormone would be another one. But other than that, MOTS-c would be my recommended one, because even if it doesn't help them lose weight, it will still will make every system in their body work better, because every system in your body depends on mitochondrial energy, ATP. So anything that is genuinely helping with that is genuinely helping every facet of your body.
You already mentioned doses. So are there there are different types of forms that this comes in?
I'm pretty sure this is exclusively injectable. I've not seen it in any other forms. And I don't think, unlike with, you know, the more popular ones like Thymosin beta-4 and BPC and all the rest of it, I don't think there's been extensive testing about this in terms of safety, because I know you're going to ask me that one next. So
you read my mind.
So when I do this, I do it more at my own risk, and I must admit, because of the high cost and because of that lack of safety profile, this is not something that I have on regular rotation, but I do like it. So, you know, if someone gave me a credit for, I don't know, thousands of dollars of supplements, I'd probably be on my list, because I do like it otherwise. But again, I'm not, my mitochondria is already fairly optimized. I don't have a weight issue. I know people who have a weight issue, often that becomes a priority for them, and then that's why I thought I'd mention it, because it is one of my favorites for that.
And it's also a great distinction and education there, speaking about getting the thyroid optimized first, because otherwise it's not, you're not fixing the issue. This is there to help enhance what your body is doing well.
Yes.
Oh, and this is great. Thank you so much. I'm really enjoying this. So I know we've got another one on the list. So please tell us what it is.
Well, this one tends to be quite popular. This peptide's when I recommend it to people, and I actually can recommend this one because the primary delivery of action usually is intranasal. So and that is Selank and Semax. So Selank and Semax are very similar in a lot of ways. They're, for simplicity's sake, brain boosting compounds, both of them. They help with learning, they help with regrowing brain cells, they help with cognition, they help with focus. They're both fantastic. The difference is Semax has an energizing quality to it, energizing for the brain and body, and then Selank has a relaxing quality to it. So Semax is more of a dopaminergic, and then Selank is more of a GABA stimulator. So I really like to have, you know, first thing in the morning, little sniff of Semax, get me going. and then maybe in the evening, a little sniff of Selank to calm me down. These are great compounds because they've been studied very extensively in Russia, where they were created. They were created many decades ago. There's a good safety profile on it. The side effects seem to be non-existent from what I've seen and any of the literature that's been translated anyway. It just seems to be a really safe, really effective compound. Now, when I say really safe, I would put Semax as a stimulant, maybe not as effective as, say, coffee, but I would consider it to be much safer. Because although it has, how do we say it? Though it has some kind of stimulatory effect, I find it's not a real stimulant, because what characterizes a stimulant to me is that it has a peak and then a crash. I don't perceive any crash with Semax. I just perceive like you feel energized and then you carry on feeling energized. And then there's no crash a few hours later. It's just you get to the end of the day, right? And there's also, you don't feel jittery at the end of the day because you're still overstimulated. That may happen with different genuine stimulants. So it's stimulating, but I wouldn't call it a stimulant. And so for that reason, I mean, if you're really exhausted, you may not find it energizing enough. If you're really addicted and habituated to having a lot of actual stimulants, then you're probably not going to find it stimulating enough. But if you're someone like me who doesn't use any stimulants, it's stimulating in a very pleasant way without creating that crash and without creating that jitteriness. And the Selank, on the other hand, is similarly, I would say, mildly calming. So it doesn't have a, like a drinking alcohol kind of level of effect. It's not, or a Xanax or something. It's not big like that, but it has like a nice little taking the edge off kind of thing to it. And I think that's because it really is working in a safe way, that it's not as powerful as some of the drug versions. But of course, it doesn't have all the drawbacks and downsides of the drug versions: the addiction, the peak, the crash, the withdrawal, the tolerance, all of the the reasons why it's not a good idea to take any drugs. Selank and Semax doesn't have, and I have tested that out. I've tried having periods with it, stopped, no withdrawal. So not only no crash, no withdrawal, really no difference. It's like, it's nice, but I could easily forget to have it. And because it's in this place in the fridge, so I often forget. You don't forget to take things that are addictive, right? So I think there's no addictive quality. It's got a nice beneficial quality. And other than that, yeah, as I said, brain healing, help BDNF, nerve growth factor, growing new brain cells, all of that awesome stuff. So I'm a big fan.
Right. And so then, as you made the distinction, you would take one in the morning and one in the night. It's not that you would either swap it or take them together ever.
You can. No, you can. That's just an example. If you wake up with anxiety, you can have Selank in the morning. And if you need a boost at night, you can have Semax at night. And you can do them together if you just want to help your cognition in general and you don't want to be stimulated or relaxed. You can actually have both to kind of cancel each other out. So you can absolutely do that. I know you're going to ask about dosage next. So how I do that is they always, in my experience, come in a bottle already dissolved. And so I just would have a spray of each, because I don't want to be spraying loads of sprays up my nostrils. So whatever they give you, I would want a spray of each. But to be honest, I want that spray to be as strong as possible. So if wherever you're buying it has different versions of different strengths, I personally would go with the strongest one, the highest concentration.
And then for this, would there be, I thought you said it's very, very well researched and very little safety concerns. So is there anything or off the top of your head that you can think of, or not really?
I haven't seen anything. I'd be interested to hear it if someone again wants to put it in the comments underneath, but I've never seen any issue with Semax or Selank at the recommended amounts, at least, right? I don't know what would happen if you did like a whole bottle worth in one go or something. But again, as I said, because it's always sold dissolved in the bottles and so much you can get in those at one time. So
yeah, and we're not asking you to try that. That's not a recommendation. We don't need that feedback. Thank you.
Absolutely not. But yeah, so I've never tried it, so I don't know. I haven't seen anything. But yeah, if you just stick with the amount that is recommended, it seems extremely safe.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, what are these the peptides that you wouldn't recommend and the reasons for that?
So I'll do two that are well known and two that are not. Let's do the well known ones first. So I personally do not like Melanotan. Melanotan 1 or Melanotan 2. For me, and I'll tell you why I don't like them. Maybe it won't apply to you, maybe it's great for you, but this is for me. So melanotan comes from the alpha MSH hormone, which broadly is a stress chemical. It's an excitatory stimulatory chemical. Now, melanotan, I think at one point, this has changed. The peptide I'm going to talk about after this is probably the most popular peptide now. But for a while, melanotan was the most popular peptide. Loads of people were taking it. I remember it was like on our mainstream TV over here in the UK. People were overdoing it. And that's because it's a peptide that really works, as many of them do. But unlike a lot of other ones, you can see the fact that it works. So what does it do? It stimulates melanin, which is the color pigment, right? So people do it to tan. It's as simple as that. Will it tan you if you literally do not get any sun? I think that's debated. I think the answer might be no. But the point is, you'll get much more tanned from the sun that you do have contact with. And even if you're not sunbathing, just, if you're outside walking or whatever, right, any contact with the sun will stimulate a lot more tanning if you have melanotan than if you don't. Now, that's one reason it's so popular. The other reason it's so popular is because it was called the Barbie doll peptide, I think. And that's because, it's not famous for having 3 benefits. It would tan you, it would increase your sex drive, and it would reduce your appetite. Now, all of these are true, except for one to me, kind of. It definitely does tan you. However, there is such a thing as being too tanned. There is such a thing as having too much pigment. This is where you're more likely to get melanomas and various other issues. So I'm very wary about that. But to be honest, it's not the reason I don't take it. Another thing it's supposed to help with is sex drive. I say supposed to. I guess the fourth benefit is anti-inflammatory. So melanotan is quite a long hormone that's similar to a peptide that you create naturally in your body called alpha MSH, as I mentioned earlier. So melanotan is similar. So a piece of melanotan is also sold separately as another product called KPV. So peptides are chains of amino acids. So a little portion of that chain is sold separately as KPV, and that's sold as an anti-inflammatory peptide. I'm not a fan of that either. I would say save your money and get TB4, TB500 instead. And another portion of it is sold separately called PT141. And this is actually being licensed as a drug by the FDA in America for, I can't remember what they call it, like female, doesn't want to have sex syndrome. I don't know what they call it. I can't remember. But a lack of sex drive in women. They came up with some name for it, separate for if men have it. So they sold it for women. Now, I think it hasn't become hugely successful because you've got to inject yourself, and most people don't want to inject themselves. So that's the only way PT141 works. It's also the only way melanotan works. So it has that anti-inflammatory compound. It has this sex drive boosting compound, and it has this tanning part to it, and it reduces appetite. So what's not to love? Well, to me, the thing was not to love was the reduction in appetite. And it made me, it did more than just reduce my appetite. It made me nauseous. I really did not like it. I believe I already have a tendency to overproduce alpha MSH. Upstream from alpha MSH is ACTH, which is like this primary stress signaler. So to me, the reason why I don't like it and don't generally recommend it is because it's a stress chemical. Now, the exception to that would be if you need more stress chemicals. Some people do. Some people genetically naturally overproduce stress chemicals. Some people genetically naturally underproduce stress chemicals. If you find it really hard to be motivated and get going, not because you're exhausted, just because whatever, then you may be someone who's low in stress chemicals. And then something like melanotan may well be good for you. If you're that type of person, you also tend to overeat. And you tend to have a lower sex drive. But if you're a kind of person who tends to have a high stress drive, who tends to have not a huge appetite, who tends to be quite a stressy person, then I would not recommend Melanotan. So it really depends on what kind of type you are.
Yeah, no, I know, from their previous episodes talking about metabolism, especially if you want to optimize and have a lot of energy and move through life very well, then reducing appetite, and, that's just going to mess with your mitochondrial function, your thyroid, everything. So yeah, that doesn't sound like a good one to take.
Thank you, Chrissy. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. That's absolutely true. So even in general, I don't think reducing appetite is a good idea for the reason you just said, because it slows down metabolism. But yeah, there are exceptions. There are like that type of person who's just always hungry, always eating, quite sluggish, and that person maybe would benefit from this. I don't want to say it's universally not good, but it's certainly not one of my favorites.
And you mentioned that you had another one on the list, so please, can you let us know what that is?
Yeah, so the number one peptide that is recommended and used these days, per my understanding. So for many years it was TB4 and BPC 157 for injuries, but these days it is SEMAGLUTIDE, often referred to as Ozempic, which is a GLP-1 activator. So there's a lot to say about this not being good, and it's actually amazing that I have to tell people that it's not good, because it's pretty obvious that it's not good, but I also completely understand why so many people are using it, and it's because it does actually work. So let's talk about what it is, how it actually works, and then it'll probably be quite apparent why I don't use it or recommend it. What it is something that tells your body it's already full. That would be the simplest way of explaining it. There's complicated hormonal processes with signaling satiety and signaling hunger, and this signals satiety quite strongly. Not in the same way that oxytocin does. Oxytocin kind of, which I'll talk about in a hormone episode. Oxytocin signals more fulfillment, is how I would describe it. Although satiety would be another word for it. The type of satiety felt by created by Ozempic or semaglutide is specifically food, right? I'm not hungry. That's what it's saying. It's not that it makes you satisfied in life or emotionally in general. So it does that by activating this GLP-1 receptor. So what's the problem? The problem is when your appetite is so much decreased, you eat less. But Elwin, that's not a problem. That's a good thing. I'm eating too much. That's why I gained all this weight. I understand that, but here's the thing. Okay, so first of all, when you take Ozempic semaglutide, if you've taken it, I don't think you have, right, Chrissy?
No, I haven't.
No. So when you take it, you feel really, really sick. Really sick. So it's beyond just not appetite. It's like, ugh, A lot of people feel poisoned, and it's really bad the first few days, and this is something you take once a week. And then maybe like day 5, 6, 7, you're starting to feel better, and you take it again, and oh my God, you feel really sick again.
What's causing that sickness?
I don't think it's 100% known, but my understanding is it's activating. It's beyond just satiety. It's like, ugh, don't give me any more. That's the signal that the body's basically giving. It's a specific type of nausea. If you have excess dopamine, that can lead to nausea, which is why, quite often psychedelics, if you take those, you have this nauseous feeling. It's not like that. It's a different kind of nausea that, feels more like a being poisoned kind of thing, rather than a stimulated thing. If you take strong stimulants as well, you don't have much of an appetite, but that's the dopamine feeling. This is the GLP-1 feeling. Hard to describe, but so it makes you feel really sick. That before you take it, they say do you have pancreatitis? Do you have this? Do you have that? No. Okay, because if you did, you shouldn't take it. And then they have to test you regularly, or they should, to make sure that it doesn't give you those things, right? So it can cause inflammation of the pancreas. That's one of the side effects that it can cause. But back to the appetite thing. So the main thing is, will you lose weight on it? Probably. Why? Because you eat so much less, at least once you found your dose. person I know who did it, like, they told me they were eating like 70% less when they were on it, which they may have been exaggerating, but probably not hugely, right? Maybe it was actually 30% less, but even 30% less calories is a huge reduction in calories. Like, it's a massive shift for your metabolism. So when you're eating that much less, you will lose weight. But how are you losing weight, right? When you're eating that much, you are going to be slowing down your metabolism. You're going to be creating less thyroid hormone. When there's less calories available, your body assumes that there's a starvation potential situation going on, that there's not enough food, and so it down-regulates energy production. Short term, if you're really limiting the calories, you will also lose weight because you literally have to. Your body will burn some of the fat for a process called lipolysis and gluconeogenesis as well. It'll burn muscle and fat as fuel because it has to. But what happens if you stop taking it? What happens if you keep taking it? You might get pancreatitis, all these other side effects. It costs a lot of money. You're going to feel sick all the time. You're going to have a slow metabolism, which is not great for every other system of your body, your immune system, your nervous system. It's slowing down your digestion, which means transit times will increase. It'll take longer for food to get through you. Is that a good thing? Probably not. You're more likely to have fermentation going on. You're more likely to have bad bacteria, pathogenic bacteria, be able to get a foothold because they're not being moved through because the food that they eat, the substrate they eat, is not being moved through quickly enough. It's been rotting for too long before it goes out. So slowing down the digestive system, slowing down everything is not a beneficial thing. It also means when your metabolism is slow down, your body still needs energy, and so it will up-regulate cortisol and all the other stress chemicals. So for gluconeogenesis, lipolysis, the stuff I just said, for your body to burn that fat, yes, you want it to burn fat, but you don't want to have high levels of stress chemicals constantly. This has been proven to prematurely age the body, have a detrimental effect on pretty much every system of the body. Stress chemicals occasionally for 20 minutes a day or whatever might be good for you, but if they're all day because you're starving all day or feel starving all day, that's not good. It's absolutely going to drain you. It's going to deplete you. It's going to prematurely age you. And although it works, I think the average is like 10 to 15% of body weight lost. As soon as you stop eating it, it's exactly the same problem as if you're dieting, but worse. Because most people can't diet to the degree that you are able to diet with semaglutide. Most people can't voluntarily restrict their calories for 50% for a long time because the body just gives these unavoidable cravings because it actually needs fuel. And so with the semaglutide, you can repress that craving, but you're going to end up depleted in nutrients and you're going to end up with slow metabolism. This is one of the other criticisms I heard of it. A lot of people love this in the fitness scene, the gym scene, but what they worry about is people are not getting enough protein. Protein is the building blocks of every system of the body, including peptides, which are just made up out of the amino acids that we get from protein. So every system of the body suffers when we don't digest enough protein. So most people who are taking semaglutide are not making sure, make sure I get all the protein I need, and make sure I get all the vitamins I need, and make sure I get all the minerals I need, and then the right essential fats, and do all that while still having way less calories. Most people don't manage that. Most people don't manage it with a normal amount of calories or an excessive amount of calories, let alone with a restricted amount of calories. It's very difficult to get all those nutrients with so few calories. So unless you're really on top of it, you're likely to end up nutrient depleted, and you will definitely end up with a slower metabolism and an underactive thyroid. Then what happens when you stop taking it? The kind of good news about the sickness is as soon as you stop taking it, the sickness and the nausea and all the rest goes away. Your appetite comes right back. And you're going to want to eat, and you're going to want to eat a lot. Partly for whatever psychological reason, but also just because your body's low on fuel and it's low on nutrients. It's going to be like, trying to get it back again. And then you're going to be eating excessively on a slow metabolism. What's that going to do? It's going to make you gain weight. So I don't want to get all conspiratorial, but I don't understand why things like this are popularized and pushed even by, extremely successful people who I respect, are using this or recommending it, when it makes so much sense and it's so much more effective to just optimize the basic hormones that relate to weight, which would be, and we talked about this in the weight loss episode, but in a nutshell, it's the sex hormones like progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, it's thyroid, it's insulin. If you can get, and it's the adrenal hormones as well, cortisol and adrenaline. If you can get those balanced and you can get those sorted, which actually is not that difficult, as long as you have a doctor who tests you and gives you what you need, it's so much more effective and it's actually sustainable, which semaglutide and Ozempic is not.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't seem like it's a long term, it's not something that's going to, the benefit for, long term is so not there. And so if somebody has been prescribed it and is on it, that's what I always ask my friends, like, well, what's the plan? What's the plan with your doctor? I mean, like, is that it for you for the rest of your life? You just have to keep taking this, or what's the end goal here?
I was thinking, now people could go, rightly so, well, Elwin, it's the same with bioidentical hormones. You got to keep taking thyroid, you got to keep taking progesterone. So what's the difference? So let me answer that question. That's the other issue of Ozempic I haven't even come up yet. I haven't even said yet, is you feel like crap the whole time you're on it. You're not eating enough food. You're not enjoying the food you are eating in many cases. So you don't have enough energy to do stuff. Every system of your body isn't working as well. You don't feel good most of the time. Now, because you're losing weight, maybe psychologically you're going to feel better in some way. But if you compare that to optimizing your testosterone and progesterone, which is going to give you, the right confidence and relaxation, all the rest of it, optimizing your adrenals so you're going to be cool and relaxed, but with enough focus and clarity, optimizing your thyroid, which means you're going to have an abundant amount of energy, a strong, fast metabolism, like optimizing your insulin, which means that you're going to be balanced, and insulin and estrogen and thyroid are really like the primary drivers for weight gain in the first place. So you feel so much better when you take hormones. In fact, one of the criticisms about hormones is almost it's like it's cheating because it works so well and you feel so much better, whether it's men taking TRT in their 50s or women taking bioidentical, usually progesterone and testosterone, sometimes estriol as well. Like, everyone always talks about how amazing they feel and they wish they'd done it earlier. If someone ever says that about Ozempic, they're talking about the fact that they actually managed to lose weight. They're not talking about how they feel, because how they feel is not good.
Yeah, that's a great distinction. Really good. Really good. Yeah. Oh, sure, I look great, but I feel like, I can't say it, I feel crappy.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
So those are the two. Do you have some more for us?
Yeah. So one peptide that I don't recommend is called LL37. So LL37 is a cytotoxic peptide, advertised as such. Cytotoxic means is toxic to your cells. Why on earth would you take that? It's one of the primary things that your immune system actually creates to kill organisms that it doesn't like. So there are certain kind of people and influencers talking about, it helped me with this disease, it helped me with that disease, it helped me with this problem. The thing is, it is toxic. And so when I took it, I did not feel good. It created like a bit of a rash around where I did it. Someone else I knew who took it, they had a really strong rash and it lasted like ages. They had discoloration on their skin from where they took it for many months afterwards. Not surprised when it's called toxic. I also didn't experience any benefits. I do not personally know anyone who's experienced any benefits. So I wouldn't begrudge anyone who said that they've had a great experience with it. That's great. Good for you. But I would say there's so many other peptides and indeed so many other strategies that you could try for whatever issue you would want to consider LL37. I would at least recommend to put it near the bottom of that list. I mean, maybe you'd want to try before certain drugs that had strong side effects and stuff like that. But it's not a million miles away, I would say, from a chemotherapy agent in being psychotoxic. And so in that, it's something that works by killing part of you. And so, although that can be beneficial, absolutely, I'm not denying that. Sometimes your body does not break down cells like it should, that process of apoptosis, and that is the problem. But LL37 definitely wouldn't be the first thing that I would go to without a doctor's supervision. That's true of all the peptides, but it's really true of this one.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, I haven't heard of it, so thank you for that. If I see that pop up, I've got the education now, so thank you. Thank you. So I believe there was one more, Elwin, and what is that final one?
Yeah, so there's a peptide called VIP, which stands for vasoactive intestinal peptide. And this is something that I would recommend in a certain case, and then I would not recommend generally. And I wanted to point this out because I've seen it like promoted in some cases as the general health and wellness peptide. And I think that is a bit of a stretch. So vasoactive intestinal peptide is quite interesting. It vasoactive, so that, implies circulation. Intestinal implies intestine. So it's talking about like increasing the circulation to the intestine, right? The name of it. And that is what it does. It helps the process of peristalsis as well. And it seems to have some kind of very magical effect for a certain type of person. So the type that I've seen that like if I were in that position, I would want to use it, would be people who have had some kind of mold illness, some kind of heavy metal illness maybe, and who have now resolved that and cleared it up, but who still have a sluggish digestive system. For some reason, with those people, what people who specialize in that have found is that giving them VIP when they should be better, because you've already dealt with everything, you've got the toxins out, you've dealt with the pathogens, you've dealt with the inflammation, everything should be good, but it's not. Then you give those people vasoactive intestinal peptide, and suddenly it's like a light comes on. It's like everything starts to work again. It's fantastic. It's quite a complex one, and so I could do a whole episode on it, but I just wanted to mention it's great in that context. But the reason why I wouldn't generally recommend it is because it increases prolactin. And so prolactin is a hormone that is antagonistic to dopamine. And dopamine is a neurotransmitter that basically makes you feel good. That's a simple way of putting it. It also gives you energy, motivation, mental clarity, and all the rest of it. And if you don't have the energy to do stuff from dopamine, you are either like depressed or fatigued, you're not doing stuff, or you're doing stuff with stress. And so most people in life are doing stuff fueled by stress, or they're not doing stuff. And we don't want to be in either of those categories. We want to be in the category of I do it because I actually enjoy it. And that requires dopamine. And so the killer of I do it because I enjoy it is prolactin. And so we want to avoid things that raise prolactin unless we can't avoid it. So I'm not actually against VIP. If you need it, if you have a professional telling you that at this stage of your healing journey, this is going to help you, please take it. Don't not take it on my account, but don't just generally pick it up and go, oh, general health, well, let me give it a try. Because in fact, it may be having that very unfortunate side effect.
It's a great list, Elwin. I wanted to quickly ask, because I know we talked about, I'm going to jump into charcoal, because we talked about that in the previous episodes, and that, it will interact with drugs per se, but not necessarily supplements. What is its relation with peptides and things like that? Like, do you need to be aware to take your charcoal and your peptides away from each other?
It's a good question. So obviously anything other than intestinally, irrelevant, right?
Okay.
If you're injecting transdermal, intranasal, it doesn't matter because the charcoal is only going through your digestive tract. With your digestive tract, it's a good question, and I don't think it's ever been fully clarified. What they've done with charcoal is they've tested its impact on loads of different toxins, and it seems to be very good at absorbing the vast majority of them, but not all of them. And they've tested it with most of what are considered to be the essential nutrients. And they found, with the exception of vitamin A and E, it doesn't absorb any of them. And on this show, we have the opinion that most people have enough vitamin A, so we're not worried about that. And E as well, even though it's classed as a central nutrient, there's no real disease if you don't have enough of it. So not hugely worried about E as well, unlike, you know, B1, B2, C, D, basically all the rest of them. So I'm not that worried about A and E. With this peptide, with any peptide, I don't know. I personally would not take them at the same time. I would take them, you know, an hour apart. I would class it that way. I don't know, but because it's said to be so expensive, I wouldn't want the possibility to be being wasted. Now, having said that, given the nature of what tends to, because the attraction is not some physical thing. It's not like a puzzle piece that has to fit in. It's an energetic thing, right? It's the electrical charge of it that will dictate whether the activated charcoal absorbs it or not. So from that perspective, because the peptide is simply a chain of amino acids, there is nothing about it that should be being absorbed by charcoal. So it should be absolutely fine, but because peptides are so expensive, I personally would keep them apart just in case, because it hasn't been proven.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And do you have any other final thoughts as we bring this episode to a close?
Those are my favorite peptides. What are yours? You know, yeah, we haven't talked about a couple of hormonal peptides, and that's because I'll talk about them. We'll do a separate hormone episode soon. So I haven't talked about oxytocin. I know I had a request to talk more about that, and I will. And we haven't talked about growth hormone peptides, but that's because they're really hormonal. So we'll deal with that when we talk about hormones. And I want to do that soon because, as I said, you know, as I'm working with more and more people again, I'm just realizing the obvious fact, which is, yes, I want to help people with detoxification and nutrition, all the rest of it, but you kind of want to get those instant wins with people as quickly as possible for them to just feel great. That's why, you know, I call one of my brands Feel Younger. And I'm not saying it's always smooth sailing, and I'm not saying it's always immediate, but the quickest way to get to feeling great with like minimum effort required on the part of the person, like they don't have to change their whole life. They don't have to start exercising completely differently. They don't have to start eating completely differently. Like to just start, because look, not that I'm telling people they shouldn't exercise differently or eat or more or eat differently or, you know, sleep differently or whatever it may be. I do recommend all that stuff. I've talked about loads of lifestyle stuff throughout my career. But what I found is telling someone to meditate every day or telling someone to jog every day versus them actually being able to do it are often a universe apart. And so generally, the best people, what they try and do is they try and motivate you by talking about how amazing it is, right? Oh, there's so many benefits to meditation. It does this and does this and does this. And then hoping that the next morning or whatever, and you wake up and you go, oh, I suppose I should actually meditate, right? Like that it actually gets through. But a lot of the time people try and then they can't, right? They start getting racing thoughts and they're distracted and they're itching and they're this and that. And so from my point of view, I'd rather get someone in a place where they can kind of feel okay enough to actually do that stuff. So yeah, to have enough energy to want to exercise and to not feel exhausted afterwards. You know, to have enough inner peace, inner calm, which is largely a hormonal neurotransmitter thing, to be able to meditate without it seeming more like a torture session. Or to have enough, you know, dopamine to be able to set goals without feeling like it's, you know, what's the word, pulling teeth or whatever, you know. So all that personal development, productivity, health, wellness, biohacking, you know, with ice baths and all the crazy stuff, whatever it may be, it's all good. But you need a basic level of functioning before you feel like you want to do that stuff. And with a lot of stuff like intense exercise, the cold I talked about, certain ways of eating, they can actually make you better if you are above a certain level of health, but they can make you worse if you're below a certain level of health. And so we want to get to that level where we can start doing things that are good for us. First of all, that we have the motivation to do it and stick to it. And second of all, that we can enjoy the process. And then third of all, that it is actually beneficial for us. And so peptides and hormones and sometimes nutrients are like a really good starting place for that.
Wonderful, Elwin. And thank you, everyone, for your time and for joining us. And again, please, put your comments down below so that we can bring you some more episodes or anything that you're intrigued about, or if you've got some insights on any of the peptides that we've mentioned today or on any of our other episodes that we have released, please leave your comments below. Remember to hit the bell icon so you don't miss an episode. And also, subscribe, and we'll bring you more episodes that you're interested in. So take care, and we'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, I want to tell you about a way that you can support the podcast while also getting great deals on high quality supplements that Elwin and I personally use, and that's Feel Younger. What I love about Feel Younger is that they have great quality products with minimal fillers at a very affordable price. You can call their customer support team 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, and in my experience, they're very helpful and friendly. And the thing I love most of all is the amazing descriptions that Elwin has written about each product category on that topic. And each product has so much education on it that I've actually learned more from reading the descriptions than I have from a lot of articles. So to support the podcast, please use Feel Younger for all your supplement needs. And to let them know we sent you, use promo code REJUVENATEME for 20% off your first order at feelyounger.net. That's 20% off your first order using promo code REJUVENATEME at feelyounger.net.